This video is brought to you by Nebula. Today, the UK suspends some arms exports to Israel. Vladimir Putin visits Mongolia in defiance of an international arrest warrant, and the Pope heads to Asia on his longest and farthest tour ever. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Tuesday, the 3rd of September, 2024. The UK has suspended 30 of its 350 arms export licences with Israel, Foreign Secretary David Lammy has announced, due to the, quote, clear risk that they might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law. It comes after a long-awaited internal review by the Foreign Office. Lammy went on to say that we recognise, of course, Israel's need to defend itself against security threats, but we're deeply worried by the methods that Israel's employed, and by reports of civilian casualties and the destruction of civilian infrastructure particularly. Lammy made clear that this is not a blanket ban, and not an arms embargo, with the licences suspended covering items which could be used in the current conflict in Gaza. Equipment that falls under the suspension includes components which go into military aircraft, including fighter aircraft, helicopters and drones, as well as items which facilitate ground targeting. However, components made in the UK for the F-35 fighter jet programme have been exempted from the suspension, as the UK government says this would undermine the global F-35 programme. Despite Foreign Secretary Lammy taking pains to reiterate his belief in Israel's right to exist and defend itself, and his commitment to Israel's security, the partial suspension of arms export licences has not been welcomed by Israel or supporters of Israel, many of whom criticised the timing of the announcement not long after the killing of 6 Israeli hostages by Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the UK had made a shameful decision, and that it will not change Israel's determination to defeat Hamas, adding that, with or without British arms, Israel will win this war. Meanwhile, the UK's chief rabbi, Sir Ephraim Mervis, said it's beggars belief that the UK's government would choose to do this at a time when Israel is fighting a war for its very survival on 7 fronts. On the flip side, advocates of ending arm exports to Israel see the UK government's decision as the bare minimum or insufficient, given the exclusion, for example, of F-35 components. Amnesty International UK's head said it was too limited and riddled with loopholes, especially as he says F-35s are being used extensively in Gaza, where the death toll from the Israeli military offensive is nearing 41,000 people, according to Palestinian health authorities. Nevertheless, the UK's decision will likely strain its relations with the United States, Israel's biggest ally and military backer, which last month approved a further $20 billion in arms sales to Israel. There's more on the way, but remember to subscribe and ring the bell for more daily briefing tomorrow. Plus, if you want to support the channel like Blair Johnston, then consider joining the new TLDR membership program for just $1.99. Now, over to developments in the US election, in which Kamala Harris has announced that she is planning to spend $370 million on advertising between now and the election in November. Most of the funds, around $200 million, will be allocated to digital advertising, which has been described by her campaign as the biggest digital ad buy in the history of American politics. Ever since becoming the Democrats' presidential candidate, Harris has spent 10 times as much as Trump on digital advertising. Harris spent $57 million on Google and Meta in the first month of joining the presidential race, compared with just $5.6 million by Trump, who's saving his dollars and relying on so-called earned media, exposure through public appearances, as well as TV ads and in-person organising. As we enter September, the election race is entering a critical stage, and both campaigns are focusing on key battleground states. Last week, Trump turned his attention to the blue wall of Pennsylvania, Michigan and Wisconsin, whilst Harris toured the Sun Belt. Her campaign splashed out on advertising in the Savannah media market, as it seeks to broaden its appeal outside Atlanta, Georgia. Whilst Harris is leading Trump in the polls by around 3.8 points, the chair of Harris's campaign said they remained clear underdogs. For more US election coverage, check out our new Nebula original series, WTF USA. The link is in the description and we'll show you the trailer at the end of this video, so stick around. Vladimir Putin has started an official visit to Mongolia, his first visit to a member country of the International Criminal Court since it issued a warrant for his arrest nearly a year and a half ago. Members of the International Court are bound to detain suspects if an arrest warrant has been issued. Mongolia, however, has blanked calls for it to arrest Putin over his alleged war crimes in Ukraine, including the deportation of children to Russia. Now, the court doesn't actually have any enforcement mechanism, which has made putting Mongolia in line difficult. In the past, Mongolia has refrained from condemning Russia's offensive and has abstained during votes on the conflict at the United Nations. A small protest had gathered the previous day of Putin's arrival. However, aside from that, Putin received a warm welcome in the Mongolian capital, where the capital's central Genghis Khan Square was decked out with huge Mongolian and Russian flags for his first visit to the neighbouring country in 5 years. Ukraine's foreign ministry said on Monday, Mongolia's failure to arrest Putin has dealt a heavy blow to the international criminal system. Amnesty International Mongolia also said in a statement on Monday that any trip to an ICC member state that does not end in arrest will encourage President Putin's current course of action and must be seen as part of a strategic effort to undermine the ICC's work. Yesterday, Pope Francis began an 11-day trip to the Asia-Pacific region, the longest and among the most complicated of the 87-year-old pontiff's tenure. He is ambitiously scheduled to headline more than 40 events. Pope Francis started his trip in Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, making him only the third pope to visit Indonesia, which has the largest population of Muslims globally and some 8 million Catholics, roughly 3% of the population. Accompanied by the Grand Imam, Pope Francis will visit Jakarta's main mosque and is expected to tour an underground tunnel of friendship that links the mosque to the country's Catholic cathedral. He'll hold a mass for an estimated 80,000 people at a stadium in Jakarta. The trip was originally planned for 2020, but was postponed due to the COVID pandemic. Taking on this challenge at his age, and after battling a spate of health issues, highlights Pope Francis' ongoing goal of making Catholic-Muslim dialogue a priority, and is expected to highlight environmental concerns. And finally, in some uplifting news, last month saw the launch of the world's first lung cancer vaccine trial, with 34 research sites across 7 countries: the UK, US, Germany, Hungary, Poland, Spain, and Turkey. The vaccine is designed to prime the immune system to recognise and fight cancer cells, specifically non-small cell lung cancer, the most common form of the disease. The trial aims to determine if the vaccine is safe and well tolerated, and can be used in combination with established treatments. Some 130 patients from early to late stage disease will receive the vaccine alongside immunotherapy. The head of the trial in the UK said, "We are entering a very exciting new era of mRNA-based immunotherapy clinical trials." And if you wanted to know more, that's not quite all, because we've actually made a new series with Nebula called WTF USA.
Look, as British people, we often cast a wary eye at our friends across the Atlantic. But honestly, the last few months have been especially wild. We've seen Biden bail from the race after a terrible debate,
My fellow Americans,
the red-blue divide making way for lurid green, Trump accusing Kamala of changing her race, Vance getting accused of couches, endless memes about coconut trees, and endless arguments over crowd sizes.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes.
Obama making a joke, Trump talking about Biden like an ex he misses, RFK Jr. potentially having worms in his brain, before admitting to burying a bear in Central Park. Oh, and an assassination attempt that we all kind of forgot about because of all of the other chaos. I mean, honestly, WTF USA. The thing is though, while it might be tempting to just roll your eyes at these shenanigans, these aren't just meme-worthy moments. And you know I'm serious, because I've not stood up in a video since COVID. But these incidents actually pose important questions, like how much does the Gen Z vote matter this time round? How important will online campaigning and social media prove to be? What impact do running mates have? Okay, I don't have words for that one. These are the kinds of things we'll be explaining in our new Nebula original series, What to Follow USA, only on Nebula. Each week, we'll take the moments that have been dominating internet discourse and explaining the true politics under the hood. Look at me pandering to the American audience. We'll be releasing new episodes of What to Follow every Friday through to the election. The fact that it's on Nebula means we've been able to take more risks with this series. The tone and attitude of the show isn't what you'd expect from TLDR. I'm not sure we've talked about fucking couches on YouTube before, but the journalism and reporting is exactly the standard you'd expect Nebula support also means that we can do things differently, create additional content for you, and tackle topics that the YouTube algorithm just wouldn't normally allow for. It's not just this new series on Nebula either though. There's also incredible originals on the platform like Modern Conflicts from Real Life Lore, or the upcoming documentary from Tom Nicholas, Boomers, which takes a provocative look at the lives and legacy of the baby boom generation. Plus, we also post all of our normal content on Nebula ad-free, and often before it ends up on YouTube. If you want to check all of that out, plus WTF USA, then head to go.nebula.tv/WTF, or click the link in the description. That way, you can pick up an annual Nebula subscription for a huge 40% off. We're really happy with how this new series has turned out, so please do give the series a look. We'd really appreciate it.